now and get right into it. You know, the
Yeah.
live viewers love to get right into the meat and the bone. So we're live now. So when we talked before, I had created this thumbnail by vidIQ, which is this really great program, and I'm just really starting to unlock the power of it. It's not cheap, you know, as you know, being a podcaster, there's all these
Mhm.
services you have to pay for, and hopefully we'll get into some of that. But in vidIQ, I initially said I gave it a photo of you and I said, make it a cage match. And every version of it had you had the gold belt or you had my head in the ropes or you were kicking me out of it. I was like, why is the AI always making Andy win these? Like, what? This is not fair. So I'm just kidding, but it did come up with a really good one there. But you can feed it these, you know, ideas and AI will riff off of them, but you get the most out of vidIQ if you're giving it some native images to work with. But yeah, I gave you arms from your photo and did that
Yeah.
for the other lady yesterday. And I think it's the version I have is about 60 a month. And
Oh, wow.
but yeah, podcast, a lot of different things, you know, being a Zoom user, that's 159 a year. What software are you using to do the actual streaming and recording?
So I record everything off OBS, Open Broadcast Software, and I do my conversations via Google Meets, which is not as good as Zoom. Like I've come to learn this, but like I was because I use Gmail and I use like Google Drive, it's one of those things where the package I pay for kind of includes like everything and it's kind of helpful. Everything's all. And like I've just upgraded to actually have like my own custom business domain, which is kind of sounds fancier than it is, you know. But yeah, I might just have to take the plunge into Zoom to go past the 40-minute free package. But yeah. But like as for like AI stuff, like I like the sound of it IQ because you know talking about the thumbnail, I I really liked it. I liked how it turned out. Don't think it really I don't think it aged me too well, but at the same time I liked the pose, you know, the sleeves rolled up. It looked the part for the type of conversation that we're gonna have. And yeah, but
That's
I think it might
yeah.
have aged me about 10 years in the face.
That's hilarious. That's I didn't notice. I will say this. I dyed my beard for this episode and I just looked on camera and it looks like I just ate a chocolate bar. So I did a really I did a really bang up job. I love to make fun of myself. Everyone said, "Oh, you know, you can't be a podcaster and be self-conscious." So that was actually
No,
one
of
of my
course.
questions, Andy. I was the youngest of four. So
Mhm.
normally that kid's a little bit of a show off, but I was very socially inept. I was awkward. You know, I was a latchkey kid, so I wasn't around a lot of people, so I wasn't very social. So if I was to go back, if I was to bump into somebody I was in primary school with and told them I was a podcaster and they hadn't seen me since then, they'd be absolutely floored. Now, were you the class clown? Were you always charismatic? Were you the shy guy? Was this a big leap for you to get on camera?
Honestly, like it's a bit of all of the above, to be honest. So like whenever I was like so similarly enough, like I was the third of four, all boys in our house, and I was always the had to be the center of attention because I was always doing something. I was always either cracking jokes or whatever it may be, and like I always kind of got into a lot of confrontations. We'll say I was very confrontational, short-tempered as a kid. Um, then as I kind of got older into like high school years, I was more or less sort of bit of a class clown type thing, you know, like a really weird, misguided sense of humor, I guess you could say. But then it was sort of as it got like, I think I sort of like regressed over time. So then I kind of got to the point where I would have been very shy to go out and do this. It would have the opposite of what I was when I was like growing up. And I think I just kind of began to enjoy my own space and like, you know, my particular friend groups and everything. And, um, but yeah, so like it kind of almost like becoming a podcaster was like a full circle moment from when I was a lot younger. I I don't think anybody could have ever predicted I would have gotten into doing something like this because I don't think I ever really gave anybody a reason to think that I could have. I never even thought myself, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm glad you brought.
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, oh no, I was just gonna say it was one of those things where I, you know, people kind of just knew me for who I was, but they never knew this side of me, and I don't think I did either.
Hidden talents, hidden skills sometimes. And I tell people, I've got some friends with smaller children, and I said, you have no idea what skills your kids may have until you try to unlock it. There might be a musical skill. They might have artistic talent, because I'll tell you, the school is not going to bring it out of them. The school is there to pass whatever the government says that they need to be, this
Yeah.
qualitative score that they're so hung up on. So you almost have to put your children, I don't have kids, but if I did, I would definitely put them in multivariate environments to see where do they thrive, where do they need help. And there are things that there's skills in the last. I'll give you just a very brief example. So I hated doing shorts when I started, and I want to get into the evolution of your
Mhm.
podcast, because you and I made changes. um, what we ended up doing as podcasters is different than how we started. So I obviously started long form business interviews. I resisted. I don't think I'd cut shorts, which shorts were already wildly popular, but I don't think in the first 6 months of these one-on-one interviews, which I did one every week, it took me 6 months before I started cutting the shorts, and the early shorts were terrible. But just recently, because I'm a music fanatic, and I
Mhm.
still don't enjoy editing videos, and I don't enjoy making the shorts, but I realized I enjoy applying the music to a short. So
Yeah.
what I'm doing now is I found a way to do it that makes it exciting for me. So obviously the shorts are always the guest, like you speaking, and I'm going to cut it. Even in this video, you're going to make a paragraph, and I'm going to cut it, and it's going to match the music. And if you watch some of the shorts of the last couple of weeks, and I'm not saying I'm great at it, this is just like a new thing I'm learning because I'm really enjoying it. As you're making your points, the beats and the sounds are landing right as you're making the point. So here I am, in my head, I'm Scorsese, because Scorsese, of all directors, really understands cinematics and sound coming together.
Yeah.
He's just like the other fella from Interstellar, super genius guy, the Batman trilogy. Anyway, that fella,
Mm. Oh, yeah, Christopher
Christopher
Nolan.
Nolan. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
he's another guy that he really understands the visual and the auditory at the same time. So I found a way to enjoy something that I didn't normally like. Now, when you started your podcast, is it this current channel, or did you have something else? In other words, let's just start with this. What was the first time you went on camera that went on YouTube or out to a social platform?
So it went even before I started a podcast altogether. So it would have been July 2023.
Mhm.
I decided to start live streaming gaming content on Twitch. And this was something that had been kind of coming for a couple of months before I'd like started to like meet people, like-minded people who were into the same kind of gaming content. And I was like, I think I want to kind of like maybe invest some time, a little bit of money into doing this. And, worst case, if it doesn't work out, I have all the equipment that I can use for other reasons. So like, I had like a laptop, I had like the consoles and everything. And it was like, well, I can just do the same thing, just not on camera. So it was a sort of a low risk, high reward kind of thing. And so I started doing that, and then as my network sort of started to grow a little bit, I met a friend of mine, and we used to collaborate quite frequently. And a lot of people, like in our shared viewership, would have always said to us, like, "You guys have like great chemistry." I wish you guys would collab more often. So I was like, I just turned and I was like, and this is the sort of the the stereotype of a typical, white guy in his late 20s is like, do you want to start a podcast kind of thing? And him and I we were just like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? So we started up our own podcast, and he was like sort of busy with like work and his own his own kind of he became a games developer around this time, so he was
Oh,
kind of busy with
wow.
the preliminary stages of that. And I sort of all I had was just outside of this was just my day job, and that was kind of fine. So I kind of like wrote and produced this podcast with him, and we would have done it
Wow.
every 2 weeks.
Now, how did you do
And
that? Let me stop you there for a second, Andy, just to help people with the nuts and bolts. Did you sit at a table and at the same table with him and kind of come up with ideas, or you were writing, kind of storyboarding? What was your process?
so we kind of like had like a very brief conversation as to what we wanted it to be about.
Mhm.
And it was very much kind of, he gave me free rein to do it because he was too busy. And it was just sort of, okay. So I was just kind of, right, here's a general idea. Are you happy for me to go with something like this? So we ended up landing on, we wanted to keep it within like the sort of gaming sort of circle because that's what we were, that was our niche, that's what we were known for, so it just made sense. But I didn't want it to be like something that was very cookie cutter, the same sort of thing as you would have found in any other podcast. And so I was just like, okay, well, how about then I'll give you a list of topics and we can kind of break it down and we'll just kind of improvise and talk about things. And he was like, yeah, do that. So I gave him a list of different topics and we were like, okay, this can be our blueprint for the first four episodes, for example.
Was it ambitious? You guys going for just for views? You were thinking a monetization strategy, or was it just for fun? What was on your mind from
It
the
was
beginning?
just for fun, really, at that point. It was really just for fun because people kind of, because like I say, people had said that we had great chemistry and they kind of really enjoyed what it was. So we were kind of thinking, well, we enjoy doing that too. So let's kind of like give back in a sense and do something we enjoy and that everyone else knows and everyone else we know enjoys. And then it's like a sort of mutually good time for everybody. But then we got like we kind of sort of fell into the sort of the age-old statistic of early podcasts, and we never got past episode four. And it was like, okay, that was fine. He went off to become a games developer, and he's doing a great job at that. And but like at the same time, I had caught the bug, so I was just like, right, okay. I had sort of felt like a bit of a surge in confidence of in terms of what I was doing. It was like I kind of felt like I held my own having a conversation on camera, even though I had like live streamed for a year at this point. I still kind of found myself, it was a different sort of thing I was doing. We were still doing it live, we're doing the podcast live, and was kind of like, okay, I know I can talk to people, but whenever the focus is solely on me and what I'm saying and other people, that's different. So there was that was something I had to take into consideration. But after the four episodes that we did, I got the bug for it. And excuse me. And to go back even like further, this is actually something that comes up quite a lot for me. Is back whenever I was like a teenager, I remember being out with a friend of mine, and like I was kind of big into like talk shows at that point in time, and I just kind of made like a passing comment one day talking to a friend, and I was like, like it's mad how like all these people that were kind of walking past us here, they probably all have their stories, but like who is really ever gonna know? Like, this person here could have absolutely lived, but who's really gonna know unless somebody asks, kind of thing, you know? So that was like a passing comment I made back when I was like 15 or 16 or something like that, maybe even younger. And then like at kind of 30 years old, it became like a full circle moment where I kind of said to myself, right, I've got the bug for podcasting. I I have like a network of streamers who I've met over the sort of year at the time that I've been doing this. So why not take that philosophy and be like, okay, there's a lot of people who know all these other streamers that I know. Why not get to know them just a little bit better? I'll interview these people, and then that way everyone kind of sort of has this sort of more of a feeling of closeness to all these people that they spend and invest a lot of time watching on like a regular basis. So that was where behind the camera, kind of how that was kind of incepted.
And so that's so now we're talking about the YouTube version of the show. Is that correct?
So this was actually the I still did this live on Twitch, and this
Oh,
is
on
actually
Twitch.
I
Okay.
was only like I didn't sort of implement this into YouTube until it must have been the last 6 months. It was one of those things I massively slept on YouTube as like a platform, and I think I was more focused on like Spotify, Apple, and all those other
Sure.
sort of other streaming platforms. That when it got to the point where now me putting everything up on YouTube was it was as we like to say here in Ireland, it was a handling because
I love it.
I
Yeah.
what I did was I linked I seen that there was an option to link the RSS feed from Spotify over to YouTube, and I was like,
That's
great,
funny.
I'll do this because um So then that was fine. I linked that, I let YouTube do its thing. Everything all uploaded itself. And
And
it turned out that
if
that
you
was the
don't mind,
worst
Andy,
idea I'd ever had.
let me interrupt for a second because
Yeah,
everybody may not know the technology. So
of course.
since so I started day one as a video podcaster. So YouTube was going to be my platform of choice. And then later, about 6 months in, when I started cutting the shorts, I realized, oh, there's this thing called RSS, which means really simple syndication. It even ended up in my book once I figured out that it existed and what it was, and you can do so many things with it. So for me, I did it exactly backwards, Andy. I
Mhm.
shot on YouTube and then streamed that information into RSS, and then RSS sent it to Spotify. And what's really great about RSS, as you know, but just to let the audience know, if there's any potential podcasters out there, that after you do some initial setup, it can potentially send your episodes automatically to, well, once you upload them to RSS, it gets then simulcasted to Spotify, I think Audible, Amazon. I mean, it's a lot. It saves you a lot of time. You still have to kind of recreate some of the basics of the episode in RSS, and you can also schedule them in the future, just like you can for YouTube. And I don't know, I haven't looked at the statistics lately, Andy, but I would presume that audio only podcasts are probably the vast majority. As a matter of fact, there are podcasters that get angry if you say you have a podcast and you shoot video. There's some purists, because podcasts have technically been around a lot longer than people realize. Now, true or false? Quick ambush question. If you
Oh boy.
could, would you get in a time machine and go back and start your podcast in 2019, where if you had a cell phone camera, you could make $100,000 a year?
Oh,
During the big health crisis, anybody that had a podcast got rich. You remember when everybody was getting rich during when the lockdowns were going on, because
yeah, that's a
nobody
good
could go
point.
anywhere and everybody was spending 20 hours a day on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, like back whenever like being like a content creator it was like a lot more accessible. I'll say accessible. It was easier to kind of like break into than it would be now. Honestly though, no, I don't think I would. I don't
Oh
think I
wow,
would because I like what I have now and I like what I've done with it. And I feel like if I was to have started this back at 25 years old, I don't think it would have been anywhere near what it has
interesting,
turned into, to be quite
interesting.
honest with you. Just I think on like a personal level there, my life in 2019 was an entirely different thing than what it is
Okay,
now in the entirety of the 2020s, to be honest. Like it was yeah, like and I like to think that, and I know you say 100K and 100K is a life-changing amount of money, but I like to think like it all happened when it was supposed to, and the
sure.
way it's kind of going is the way it's supposed to. So that's the sort of, I take a lot of comfort in kind of feeling that way about it. You know what I mean?
And of course, you can't judge someone like in your case, your numbers on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, which is another big one, might be vastly different, because I've had people come to me and they were like, Robert, I'm thinking about going on this guy or this lady's podcast, but they've only got, 2 subscribers on YouTube or whatever. And I'm like, they're probably not. I said, are they audio only? Yeah. I said, well, and then we'd look and they're huge on Apple Podcasts, great ratings, lots of
Yeah.
downloads. Because ultimately, and of course, you and I are in the same position when we choose a guest, or when a host chooses us, they're making a decision based on whether they like us or the data or and I wasn't sure if I was going to share this, but you and I are both members of Podmatch, and I do bring them up
Yeah.
quite often because I think it's again, it's another expense, but it helps you. It's a lot easier than trying to scare up guests off Facebook, which is what I was
Oh,
doing
of
before. And
course.
there's some great groups on Facebook. I don't want to knock them, but Podmatch has a system. It's designed for hosts to find guests and vice versa. But I had pitched a guy to be on his podcast, and this guy, I've got pretty thick skin, but and I can't even say what he said to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was a little shocked. So he just didn't think I was a fit for his show, and he's been a podcaster for a number of years. He's about 10 years older than me. So I was really shocked at at his response. He could have just said you're not a fit, but he I think he must have really been saving up a lot of frustration, because I've been frustrated. I had a guest not show up just, I think it was 2 days ago. And I
Oh,
can
wow.
tell you, I've not had a guest not show up in a year and a half, and I shot every week for a year. Now, one guy
Yeah.
didn't show up for a pre-show way back when I was doing pre-shows, but thankfully, as a business podcaster, I don't run into that very much. Now, if I was doing an art podcast, which I love the art community, I've worked with them over the years, but I know they're chronically late. They might not show. But this was a business guy, and he burned me on the day of the podcast. So after that happens a few times, and I'm sure you can confirm, you do start to get a little pickier about guests. So do
Yeah.
you kind of what goes through your mind when you're looking at a potential guest on Podmatch or on socials?
So, I was funny enough you asked this because I was thinking about this quite recently, and I I've found myself in the very fortuitous position where more people are reaching out to me than I am reaching out to become a guest on the show. Like that's something that, and I never even considered this to be a thing right when I started. Um, but the basis of my podcast, like I kind of leave it incredibly open-ended in terms of it's about storytelling. And now I there is this sort of angle about it being people within creativity or creative arts, but it can be absolutely anything because, you know, entrepreneurs are a very good fit as well because there's always a good story with entrepreneurs about how they got into where they are because with entrepreneurs there is it was never the first thing they got into, never the second, the third, fourth, or even fifth. There was always a bit of a ladder in terms of how they got to where they are. Um, I kind of like I think pitch as well is a very important thing. That's something that's really kind of occurred to me lately when people email me or message me on Podmatch and it's just like, okay, I think I'd be a good fit for your show, XYZ. And I look at it and be like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. There's a lot of talking points. There's a lot of, and the good thing as well about Podmatch is, as a side note, is you can see what other podcast people have been on. So you can really kind of get a good idea as to what they're going to be like as a guest. And I think that's very, very important because, you'll also know this that when you do interview people, as an interviewer, you have the biggest job at times of getting the story out of people sometimes because, not everybody's a fantastic talker. Some people are just shy and some people are still maybe early in their sort of being their journey of being a guest on a podcast. And I know when I started, I was not the best guest at all. Like I struggled to sort of have it come naturally because I was always on the other side. Um, but I think for me, you kind of have to really, in a sense, you have to sell, but the pitch is important because you'd be like, okay, this is what I can bring to your viewers. This is what, I have to sort of say. And then as an interviewer, you'll go and do your own sort of primary research in terms of what can we talk about that they haven't necessarily mentioned, but is in the public domain, etc., etc. But whenever I'm like reaching out to people, it's sort of it's very, very dependent because there are times I might just be scrolling through IMDb or social media like Twitter or Instagram, and I think, oh, okay, yeah, let's give this a go. Yeah, it's very spur
I've
of the moment, spontaneous, you
Yeah,
know?
I've pitched a few people that I never thought would come on, way outside of like one guy, the one that really floored me was Robin Spinell.
Mm,
As far as guitar YouTubers, this guy is one of the biggest. Well, there are people that don't know him, but he did these mega sessions where he's busking on the street up in Canada and he's shooting video for 3 or 4 hours and he's in a not a rough neighborhood, but it's a high transit area. So he constantly gets assaulted and has all these crazy things happen to him. And not that he likes it, but he likes the attention. He obviously wants people
yeah,
to watch him play guitar and he supports himself. And I don't know too many musicians now that can truly say that they're full-time musicians, but he's a full-time musician between his Patreon and his other things. So obviously there's a monetization there. Would you agree with the statement that if someone is starting a podcast as a source of revenue, they should not?
yeah. So it very, very much depends on what you've done outside of that, for example. That's what I would kind of say, because I kind of think anybody can start a podcast, but if you don't have any experience in podcasting, you don't have any experience in media or anything like that, start a podcast because you want to, but
That's right.
don't, but also kind of still make sure that you as a person are secure. Because if you just decide, let's say, you worked a random 9 to 5 or any kind of run-of-the-mill 9 to 5 for 15, 20 years. And you decide one day, it's like, "Do you know what? I'm going to pack this in and I'm going to start a podcast." Then you're you're more likely destined to fail because you don't know what kind of goes in and what goes into it, what you need to do, the kind of work and everything like that. You might have the work ethic, but I kind of think you need to give it a go first and then kind of forecast it
Sure.
over the period of 12 to 18 months and kind of think, okay, is this going to go? Because longevity of a podcast is entirely down to the host. Entirely down to the host. So if you're 100% self-produced, you are in control of how long you produce your podcast for. But you kind of need to look at it in terms of, okay, what are my numbers like? What are the chances of monetization? Because monetization is it's something that you really, really, really need to work for. You need to put that kind of
Sure.
investment in to get it back. Like I'm not monetized in pretty much anything that I do online at the moment because I haven't looked into it. I haven't looked into
Sure.
what I need to do to get there. But I think, if you're starting a podcast with no experience just for monetization purposes, then just take the first half of that, start the podcast,
That's
go
right.
for it. But if you're doing it for the money, you know, have a rethink about it.
That's right. That's
If
right.
you're
Yeah.
if you're like an actor or something, or if you've got like a well-established, base,
I'm
you
laughing because I shot a video that's I said if you're gorgeous, if you're attractive, and I actually I really spill the beans. I'm really honest because the worst thing I can do, Andy, is to give somebody false hope. So I'm
Mm,
always, trying to encourage people. So I'm like you. I tell people just get started because
yeah,
whatever your topic is, your show, it's probably going to change. Your format's going to change. Your camera might change. Your mic may change. And I did to tap into something that you said earlier. I did like you did. The equipment that I bought for the podcast was, other than the video element of it, was the same equipment I needed to narrate my audiobook. So I
yeah,
could justify that what we would say here is a tax deduction, that investment, because it was dual purpose. I realized the book was a business and the podcast was a hobby. But to get into monetization for a second, for people not familiar, I think for the what we would call the classic version of YouTube monetization, I think it's 1,000 subs. You have to meet both of these criteria, and we're going to not get into the shorts because that math is very complicated. But I think it's 1,000 subscribers and then 4,000 hours of watch time within 365 days, something like that. It's
yeah.
so the 1,000 is actually easier than the watch time. And I mean, not that it's easy, but most people say that
Oh
it's
yeah,
easier to get the subs, so the subscribers. But also too, even if you're not trying to get monetized through YouTube, that's just one way. So let's say you have like every time you shoot a video, you guarantee you got 60 people that show up and they're going to watch it and they're going to watch your episode all the way through to the end. And you have a product like a book, for instance, and that podcast is pushing that book. Like on Amazon, I tell people there's two ways you can make money as an author, not just through the sales of your book, but you can also be on the Amazon affiliate program. So if you go to this, because it'll be in this video, if it's not already in the description, if you buy my book through that link, I not only get my 60% commission off the cover price from Amazon. That's also my Amazon affiliate link. So I'll get a little tiny affiliate commission on top of that. So I'm really making two commissions off of one sale. So that's one way. And then my first ever episode, I had a sponsor.
wow,
Um, and I would have kept that going, but unfortunately, excuse me, the gentleman that I hired to do the editing I think it took him 3 weeks to finish my first episode, and he knew that the time was of the essence. So I lost my had a sponsor and lost them because of
Mhm.
the editor. But lessons learned. I kind of started a little too ambitious and got my hand slapped, and it wasn't important. But there's all those different ways. There's monetization through YouTube. You could sell affiliate products. You could have your own product, and you could have sponsorship. And there's 10 more that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there's a lot of ways, even for low views, low viewer count, low subscriber count, people can still make fantastic money as if you're talking to a niche. Now, am I safe in the assumption that you and I both, we really don't have niches because we talk to a very broad group of people. So that's a little tougher for us to gain an audience. Would you agree with that?
I think so to a degree, yeah, absolutely. Because when you look at the sort of grand scheme of things, like there are many, many interview-based podcasts. And in that sense, you kind of really then need to look into the sort of basis of it. So like yourself, you have a business-based podcast. Mine is more creative storytelling, if you want. I mean, I can't really fully define it because it's just storytelling, I suppose. But that being said, you kind of look into sort of what the sort of basis of it is, who the type of guests are, who is coming on the podcast and things like that. Like, and yeah, like I think interview-based podcasts, I think as much as they are quite common, I think they're also kind of fruitful as well because I think everybody is always kind of looking to hear people's stories, no matter what the sort of, no matter what their sort of background is. Because let's say you and I both had a mutual guest on our shows. I think that kind of is mutually beneficial because people want to hear, okay, well, he was on behind the camera. Let's see if what he says is any different on the Free Time Mastermind. That kind of way. It's maybe I'm kind of looking at it through rose-tinted glasses, maybe a little bit idyllic, but I genuinely think that, with interview style podcasts, there is like an infinite scope, even if there is like a lot of overlap between shows.
If you're right, if somebody's a subject matter expert on something I'm very curious in, I'll follow them across several podcasts because I'm like, oh, I want to, because 30 minutes, an hour is not a lot of time to get the gradient of detail. So again, that we're back to the niche. So if somebody's a subject matter expert, I try to soak because I love getting information and new things. So yeah, I'll follow them across. There's a guy I just discovered today that he's really up on American foreign policy, and he's not just a talking head. I think he worked for a big government agency for a while, and although his opinion is not so different from what the government says, sometimes I'm looking at I want to look at a point from a couple of different perspectives, and I
Yeah,
think
of course.
unfortunately a lot of people don't. And I want to know the left, the right, the middle, what you guys have, like the labor, the conservatives, the Tories, I want to know what's everybody, because really the truth is usually somewhere sliced in between all of those
Yeah.
different perspectives or a collection of both. I've never been one of those guys that I just point at one group and go, yeah, they got it all figured out because I don't know. Yeah, yeah. So getting back to monetization, so you had this point where you started on Twitch and then it became a much more, not that Twitch isn't serious because I know people are making really good money on that,
Mm.
but it evolved, it changed. And then now you found yourself in a position of a writer. So you're adding writer to your resume, not just
Yeah.
podcaster, which is exactly what I did. And so to make sure I get this out there before I forget, one of the biggest reasons I just had to have you on the channel is because when I was on your channel, I think your questions, the way you phrased them and the way you conversed with me was better than any. And I sorry to anybody who's watching this that was a host. I just really love the way you ask questions and you made me think in a way that other people don't, even on a personal level in my friend circle. And I thought I got to get this guy on because I want to know, do you think, before I get into my next topic, which is your book, do you think it's the way you research the questions? Do you think it's native to your person? Where do you think that comes from? I mean, I realize you might not be aware of that until just now, but you ask really great questions and you got some very unusual responses from me. So when I look back, I had to watch that interview again. I thought, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing.
Well, thank you, first of all. Like that honestly like means a lot because like I kind of went into this with no interviewing experience whatsoever. I just sort of did research, asked questions based on that, and I developed my sort of interview style. So just for context there. But the way I ask questions, I wouldn't say that I ask them in a specific way or that there's like that kind of purpose because something that I kind of notice whenever I look back on when I ask questions is they will be very, very long-winded at times because I think in a sense, whenever I'm asking particular questions, there are there's a certain depth I kind of want to go into in terms of what it is that I'm asking. So, and I kind of feel like sometimes if I'm asking something, it's a little bit too risky of it coming across as a very general question versus, okay, well, if I kind of ask this question, then go a little bit deeper into context as to what I'm either looking for or what I just kind of think the sort of answer the question deserves or the question that deserves, you know what I mean? But I don't know. I think I've always kind of been a little bit of an overthinker in that sense. So I just kind of really want to make sure, I guess, that I'm being understood in terms of what I'm asking and that it's relevant. And I'm glad that it comes across the way it does. Like I'm glad, and I've had other people, particularly on Podmatch, say really kind of compliment my interview style. So honestly, it means the world. But I honestly couldn't say that I have a specific style, more so that I kind of look at the notes that I have based on my research that I'll have on the screen and utilize active listening. And then I'll just be kind of like, okay, you mentioned this, so can you tell us more about this, but also this in relation to it. It just my mind's kind of like a spider web at times. Like it just is going in
That's
all different kinds of directions. And
I was thinking about that because I thought if I watch it again, I'll figure it out because there's a, but I think you were pulling at narrative threads. If I had to just like gut reaction,
mm.
what was going on that was different in that interview? Because I've been on interviews where the guy's like, and Robert, your neighbor says you're a really good guy. Is that true? And and the way, and it's funny because we all know that's bad, but there are people that have been podcasting for 10 years. I want to be so much better a year from now than I am right now. And I want to be better than that. I want to keep going. And I learned the hard way and I see it in the numbers. I see it in the viewers that we have right now. It works better when you get right into it. So I don't do long intros anymore. I don't say, Andy was born at a young age, and then go into that. So I pull the story out during the dialogue, or sometimes we don't get to that part at all, and sometimes it's not relevant to the story. If somebody is on the podcast to discuss a traumatic event at a particular part of their life, their childhood might not be germane to the conversation. But yeah, I think your cleverness was in the active listening, and I think you were pulling on narrative threads because the thing that was so great about the interview is there was no interruption of flow. And when somebody's stopping to think about the question, formulating, or particularly us men, women are brilliant at it, but us guys, we can't multitask to save our lives. And when the moment the guy looks at a piece of paper and he's checking to see if he asked that question or not, it's like trying to it wrecks the rhythm of the interview. And we had hopefully people will go back and watch it because we use the collaborator function. So both of us
Yeah.
get credit for that. But yeah, I think if the people watching now or watching later want to see a good interviewer, watch Andy's podcast with me. And he's got other great ones too. He's got a lot of great, if you like audio only, he's got a bunch of those as well. So what was the genesis, not of the idea? Did you first think, I need to write a book, or did you have this subject that you wanted to get out of yourself? Just kind of that genesis moment. Where did that come from?
So I've interviewed like a lot of people who've written like nonfiction, and whether it be like a memoir or something just about what they do, for example, likes of yourself and a few others as well, name a few. And I kind of was like, it was one of those like midnight thoughts that I had, just like lying in bed thinking, like, I think I just come off an interview with somebody and we're talking about their book, and I was like, do you know, this could be an idea. I feel like I could do this because I have a lot to talk about based on what I've learned and what I've got out of podcasting in the time. So like I think it was like August maybe or something that I started that the idea came, and like within a couple of days I was like, I had like the everything conceptualized. I was ready to start writing. I was like, okay, I need to like do like a blueprint of what I kind of want to write about. I
Okay.
knew that I
So
wanted to.
similar to the podcast, right? Because you did kind of do some pre-play, which a lot of people don't do that. I guess what I'm trying to emphasize to the audience, Andy, is you conceptualize and you organize ideas. So
Mhm.
did you sit down and try to at first write out as much as you can and just kind of dump the can out and or did you have just singular words or did you go with singular sentences? In other words, when you laid that first brick, what did
Mhm.
that look like?
So it's actually funny that you put it that way because a lot of like authors who I've spoke to, now it's just as many authors say this as ones who disagree with it, but a lot of people I've interviewed before have said, if you have an idea, write it down on the page and just keep on going until you don't have any more. And I like that as I like that because I did end up doing that, but I wanted to have the structure of it first. So ultimately, where I started was okay, I want to go from the beginning. So a lot of people will know the story of me kind of when I started like streaming to podcasting to where I am today. They'll know it for what they see, for what I kind of allow to get out there. And like a lot of the stuff we've talked about is probably like a lot of people will know, a lot of people won't know at the same time, but the book kind of goes a lot more into that. So the first thing that I thought was, okay, I want to lay out the story from whenever I first hit press record on doing the podcast to where I am today. And obviously, with it being a sort of continuation in terms of like, I wasn't sort of ending it at a certain time. It was like, okay, well, there's only so far I can go with the story as long as I kind of, make the chapters kind of appropriate to say this is a good ending point to sort of say that from this point onwards, we're kind of in the same sort of place where we are, or we were like maybe a few months ago when I was writing it. Um, then like I got to that point, I was like, okay, the story is out there of, start to finish in terms of everything like kind of learned, and then it goes on to a sort of more of a kind of lessons learned sort of thing where I'm kind of thinking, okay, here are a few topics to talk about. So like it talks about kind of so the last chapter of like the story, for example, is I when I make the decision to stop live streaming my gaming content because I absolutely loved that. It was a huge part of my life at the time. But I had to make the decision to stop doing that to focus on the podcast, to give that more attention that I think it deserved and what actually kind of was more fulfilling to me. So that's like kind of like, the middle of the book, one of the sort of heavier chapters. But that's like the end of the story because to me, it's at that point where as soon as I went full time with the podcast in terms of my online sort of life, it was I can't really write more about that because it's like, okay, well, then I had this guest, and I had this guest, and I had this guest. So then after the story part of it finishes, it moves on to things like the momentum, riding the wave of momentum, for example, dealing with burnout, sort of what kind of responsibilities that we will face as interviewers in terms of like our guests, sensibilities, the use of content, things like that. Um, yeah, and a few other things as well. So it's a
And the
wee bit
books
like a bit of a hybrid almost in terms of when you look at like a memoir to sort of this is a story, this is what I've learned kind of.
and the book's finished, Andy, or it's about to be finished? Because I understand it was a pretty late stage. Quite a bit had been put down.
Yes, so the first draft is finished. I'm currently going through the editing process right now. But I'm more than confident that so I have a release date for it as well. So it's going to be released on the 5th of March. But I'm fully confident of that. Like I'm in the editing stage at the moment. And also, I had a because we actually talked about this whenever you were on my show, the size of the book in terms of the dimensions. And because I don't have the proof copy with me, I did order it and it did come, but I went for the 9 by 6,
Oh,
and
all right. Yeah.
well, yeah, I so
So tell us about that. Yeah, I know.
oh man,
I know what that looks like on your desk. I'll bet you I've got a picture in my
oh.
head. But paint the picture for the audience.
Okay, so it was just for a bit of context for those watching and listening right now. So, whenever you are releasing a book through Amazon, you can sort of pick the size of the book, and it goes from anything from like pocket sized right up until I think the biggest is 9 inches by 6 inches,
And
and
this
it
is
does
to give some context. This is 8.5 by 5.5. So yours is a little bit bigger
that,
than that.
and yeah, exactly right. But also, one thing that I kind of learned that you have to sort of take into consideration is the length of your book to warrant the size of it.
I don't mean to
So,
laugh. I'm sorry.
no, of course, no, listen, because it is one of those things that I think is it's important to get out there. It's important to kind of acknowledge because the first thing that I thought when I opened the package that came, the first thing I thought was, oh, this looks like a mini textbook kind of. It looked like a mini textbook versus or like a sort of like something that could have you wouldn't have really picked out of a lineup or anything like that. And I was kind of like, all right, okay. So then I kind of like I got onto ChatGPT and I was kind of like, look at the state of this. Look at the state of this. This is ridiculous. So I've opted. So right as of now, this could possibly change. I've opted to go for the 8 by 5 because I wanted to
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of come
It's a
across
good
a little bit
format.
more um like a novel kind of thing. Like
Well,
I would go
sure.
for 8.5 by 5.5, but I don't think I have the sort of I don't think I have the pages for it just yet. But yeah, so
And I'm not ignoring you. I'm getting a
no.
page count here. So there's actually more pages than this because I have an unnumbered addendum in the back. But
Hmm.
this, the actual content, the chapters, it's 150 pages and then maybe an extra 15 pages. Now, the
Yep.
reason why this size is because this is the hardcover, obviously, and text size matters. Text size is going to affect how it's pages and then the
Yep.
size of your text. But I wanted a spine large enough that I could print the title on. Now
Yeah.
that was ego for me, honestly, Andy, because I don't think my book's going to be in a retail store anytime soon, and that's the only reason why the spine matters. But it was an ego thing for me because it's going to be on somebody's shelf. I wanted to have the
Well,
title if
exactly.
it's not
Yeah.
there. So I had to kind of squat mine down and make sure that it had an adequate enough pages. And it's even more challenging on the paperbacks. On the paperback, the title is it's on there.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's true for you too, but formatting I hate to say it was harder than writing the book, but wrestling with Amazon the first time, especially when I did my Kindle, because I finally I converted my thing from Word to PDF and got it on KDP by Amazon, and that the print version looked good, and then I just uploaded the same thing to do a Kindle, and then the Kindle formatting is. And now I'm having a panic attack all over again with how that is. So,
Oh
are you going to
wow.
do the digital version or just the print version for yours?
Yeah, print and digital. And eventually look towards audiobook, but that's a
Yeah.
whole other thing altogether. But yeah, so like, because I remember you mentioning to me about because if I remember correctly, the way you said it was like, I don't mean to scare you, but look out for the formatting and it might just go. So I had that issue, but with the actual cover of the book because I sort of learned the
I
hard
don't
way.
mean to laugh.
Oh.
Yeah,
No, but
yeah.
again, it's
I
one
had
of
to go
those
get
things.
counseling, brother. I had to go.
The fir-
I'm like, Siri, I need to talk to a friend, Chat GPT, which
yeah,
I call Eva. I'm like, help me.
man, I think I was up till about 2, 3 in the morning trying to sort this because I just wanted to I wanted to sort of get it once I started doing it, I wanted to continue on with it, right? So I got to the point where I was like, okay, I want to maybe so I kind of did up the cover and so I did that in Canva, had everything all. It takes the same color scheme as my as my sort of logo and my branding and everything. So I kind of think it looks pretty good. Um, but so then had that and I was like, okay, the dimensions seem okay, this, that, and the other. Saved it, uploaded it to KDP, and all you could see was just a QR code that I had put at the back of the book. And I was like, okay, that's definitely about 2% of the entire cover that I've put up. So there was a lot of work going into the formatting in terms of, like you can't resize them basically is what I'm trying to say. You cannot resize them when they are uploaded. It will take it as face value as to what it is that you're uploading, whether that's your manuscript or your cover. So that was a fun lesson. So I had to like do a lot of chopping and changing there. I still do now that I'm changing the size. And but with the manuscript itself, I didn't find that there was the kind of issues that were in my head based on what you told me because I have everything's all sitting as a draft right now, currently in KDP. Obviously, it's still to be amended, but I kind of found that, especially with the Kindle edition, that there was no dramas whatsoever because,
Oh, thank goodness.
like, I had to really mess around with the margin size on the paperback manuscript,
Hmm.
but with the Kindle, it seemed to kind of automatically format that to that size from what I remember. I say this now when I go back to when I go back to doing this again with the updated manuscripts, I'm probably gonna have an absolute nightmare because I got away with it the first time, but we'll see. Um, but yeah, thankfully I didn't have the only lessons learned were literally kind of everything that you're uploading has to be as it's going to be printed, and auto formatting is not a thing. Amazon KDP takes absolutely no prisoners.
Yes, it's very very cut and dry. Now we're blessed to be in a time where there is this thing, because I remember what publishing was like 20, 30 years ago, and printers, were pulled by mules, and it was very complicated. And now it's you upload a PDF. I mean, theoretically, if you have, it could be that easy. And I just finished the yesterday I uploaded the audiobook. So that's done and that's for
Oh,
sale now.
brilliant.
So the first edition audiobook was up there, but now the second edition is up there. And that's a lot easier. I mean, the audio has to meet certain qualifications, but you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about formatting because it's not visual. But what I will tell you, Andy, and and I encourage you, look, I know we're both podcasters and we don't have time to watch other people's podcasts, but the young lady Shanti that I had on yesterday, she's 18, she's published 22 books. She
Wow.
knows more about publishing at 18 than I'll ever know the rest of my life, no matter how many books. And we talked about covers and money and who she uses and contract. I mean, I knew she had a lot of experience, so we got in the weeds and she knew it all. I mean, she clearly handles all of her own business at 18, and she published when she was in sixth grade the first time. So you could tell. I guess in Germany they'd call her a Wunderkind. She's definitely super talented. So that's worth watching because we spend a lot of time about making sure that the cover looks good, because that's really when people go to Amazon, that's the number one thing. It's like a dating app. You're going to look at their face and then maybe the other stuff. So definitely that's the book cover is the face of the dating app. But your podcast Behind the Camera with Andy Games is that where you want people to primarily look for you, or and when do you think we can get a copy of your book? When's the official launch date?
Yeah, so behind the camera with Andy Games, that's what I kind of am on most socials, really, to be honest. Like, and I think in terms of when you look at like the handles for like Twitch, TikTok, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, it's different, but all under if you search behind the camera with Andy Games anywhere, like it'll come up, thankfully. Like that's the with Andy Games part, as much as I kind of want to get rid of it or phase it out, it's pivotal to SEO for me
That's
anyway.
my
Like
brand. That's my
it's
brand. Yeah, I could see
it's
you like they got a guest coming in for you, and you're like, this guy, he's off brand. We can't have it, because someday when those big podcasters, they have to worry about silly things that thank God we just have on who we want. We still
yeah,
have this and we should revel in it. I know people are like, oh, I don't have enough subscribers. I don't have, yes, but you have freedom. You have freedom. You can
exactly.
do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. You don't have to worry about a sponsor walking away. And the biggest thing I would say, especially people that want to write, whether fiction or nonfiction, and whether they want a podcast, a book and a podcast is a platform. A platform just means a word, used to mean a word of something that you would stand on and be able to speak. And it gives you a voice. And, there are a lot of, there's a lot of forces in the world and not all of them are good. And having a platform gives you the ability to share your opinion and your perspective in the world. And somebody might be hungry to hear like, oh yeah, Andy, what he went through, I went through the same
Yeah,
thing, and you can bring light to somebody's life. So I think having a platform as a person is very important. I think it's even really kind of part of a healthy democracy is having conversations. And so yeah,
absolutely.
I feel very privileged to have you on. What date did you say your prospective date to have the book for sale so we can buy it up?
Well, first of all, thank you for all the kind words as well, because like that's sort of everything you said there sort of embodies why I do this as well, because it's, you're giving that platform to people who might not necessarily either have had the chance to do it before or just has a story wants to share, but the book, yes, the book is due to arrive with us on the 5th of March, so 2 months today.
Okay.
That is the I have cemented that in so that I know for a fact that it's
Hell,
gonna be out that day. I'm gonna have to just get the rest of it all done, but we're close. We're close. The aim is to have the editing all finished by the middle to end of this month, and then the final sort of 5 or 6 weeks to just sort of tighten up all of the edges, make sure that it's all going to be pretty ready to go. And 5th of March, that is the day.
fantastic. Well, when we want to make sure something happens, and I'm sure you use the same phrase there, but we say come hell or high water. In other words, no matter what happens.
Exactly.
What's is there a regional phrase that you have that's similar, or do you say the same thing?
Rain or shine would probably be the closest thing, but yeah, hell or high water. I think we would say that as well, but
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything particularly colloquial that we would say outside of that.
Where I'm from, we would also say, more specifically regionally, we would say, "If the creek don't rise," that's our kind of our local phrase. If the creek don't rise, it's going to happen. I'll leave you with that, Andy. Thank you so much. Were there any questions you wish I had asked? And I appreciate you being so generous with your time because we went way over.
Oh no, not at all. Like that's the sort of sometimes when a conversation goes over the allotted time, that's there's always good reason, I think. But no, honestly, I think we've covered a lot, and I think we've definitely it's been a very, very amazing conversation for me. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you as it always is. So thank you for your time as well. Like I really do appreciate you having me on.
The pleasure is mine, Andy. I'm going to end the stream, but of course we can continue on Zoom
Sounds good.
while I awkwardly fish for my the buttons over here. We're the world's worst